Before we begin, I just want to give a trigger warning as this episode includes themes of self-harm and suicide. This can be a very difficult topic for some people, and I completely understand if that means that this episode has to be a mess for you. But I do pray that you can see and be encouraged by the transformative power of God in someone's life. Hello and welcome to Testimonies with T. I'm your host, Tia Costello, and today I'm joined with Dillon.
Hello.
Thank you so much for being here. So just introduce yourself. Who are you? What do you do?
My name's Dillon. Amen. What do? I am not working currently, but hopefully in God's grace that will change soon.
Amen.
But I spread the gospel. That's what I do. So I've been blessed to go to different countries and preach.
Wow.
I spread the gospel online. Yeah, talk about Jesus. That's what I do.
I love that.
Yeah.
So where is it took you so far?
I've been to 46 countries.
Wow.
Into 46. I think probably 9 of them have been preaching related.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're doing good.
I love
we're doing
that.
good.
I love that so much. So we're gonna jump straight into it.
Let's go.
So talk to me. Tell me about your childhood, how you were brought up, and just kind of set the scene.
So I grew up with an older brother. Nice guy, really nice guy.
Okay.
Yeah, he's been very influential, not spiritually because he doesn't believe, he's not a believer.
Okay.
None of my family are believers actually, but just I think represents what brotherhood looks like in a good way. But yeah, don't know my dad, so never had my dad. But my stepdad is unbelievable. The way that he upheld that figure. People always ask, did you not miss it? But I think he did more and beyond. So that is kind of the family unit, if you like. Childhood, interesting is the word I'd use. I think you look back on it now and you see maybe the issues with it.
So differently.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
At the time, it's this is just life. But I think looking back, the emotive side, the things that you miss when you're younger, you look back on now and think, okay, maybe these things weren't as normal or as natural as they should have been.
Right.
So yeah, family unit was up and down, I would say. Love was missing. That's the big thing.
Okay.
The understanding of what love is. And how to love, even just saying that.
Was that from all your family members then? You felt like...
I think specifically from my mum. So we were quite a small family. My mum's family didn't talk to us.
Wow.
Because she left home very early and she's from an Asian background that's kind of looked down upon.
Yeah.
So they kind of disowned her very early in her life. So I didn't meet that side of family till I was 17. So it was quite a small unit until that point.
Yeah.
But I guess based on her experiences and what love looked like was what we knew it to be.
Yeah.
And then you meet God and you're like, oh, okay, this is not, this is true love, know? So yeah, that's kind of a little bit into that side of life. School was okay. Yeah. Sort of trying to fit in. I was intelligent per se. I did quite well.
Yeah.
I was also in that group of individuals that was the top people in school in terms of popularity.
So what was your character around this time? Were you quite outgoing or?
I would say very outgoing.
Okay.
Very outgoing. Probably too much. Because you're just trying to be seen, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Try to be funny.
With that, where you were feeling lack of love at home, you were really trying to get that from school. Right?
Yeah, attention.
Yeah.
Attention was and I think even up until my early years of Christianity, that was still present. Attention. It's nice. We love feeling attention, right?
Yeah. No, and I feel we all do it at some point in our life because actually we're feeling that loss of love. So then when we find Christ, like you said, it's that such overwhelming love because it's actually something that we've never experienced before.
Yeah. Yeah, it's unexplainable.
So then as a kid, what was that dynamic? You'd come home from school, if you'd come home from school,
Yeah, so I was very much in between my stepdad's house, my mum's house.
Okay.
So
they didn't live together?
No. So, okay. So I use the word stepdad very loosely. Right? They were together and then they weren't together, but he's always been there regardless.
Right.
And they have a really good relationship. So he's always been, in my mind, that figure. But from years 7 to 11 in school, it was between my mum's house and his house. Okay. So what happened is my mum couldn't she's just I can't deal with you. Yeah. I get sent to my stepdad's house. But to me, that was a retreat. It was wonderful.
Yeah, I'm happy to go.
So, yeah. So, coming home from school, because there'll be little things at school, right? Talking in class. Do you know the really small things?
Yes.
I think to my mum were massive.
Okay.
They were like, it was like the end of the day.
Right.
Or like, for example, you didn't do like a chore or you didn't do something. That's a big thing.
Right.
Like it becomes a massive issue.
Okay.
And again, at the time, it's like, I don't get it.
Yeah, and then it causes that like friction.
Yeah. So there was always, I mean, yeah, my brother will vouch, like, living at home was hard because there was always like, what,
you being nitpicked.
yeah, what can I do right?
Yes.
Do you know what I mean? Like, even if I do it, it's going to be wrong.
Mm-hmm.
So it wasn't the best dynamic, I would say, which is where I guess the brotherhood became important because even there was a period of time where my brother didn't live with me for like a year. He was at my stepdad's the whole time. So it was like, and we'd switch out. So yeah, it was difficult. You didn't want to be home basically. Yeah.
Do you feel like your mum was maybe dispelling her lack of love as well from all the family?
Yeah, I think as I got older, like 19, 20, 21, I'm like, okay, I can't blame. There's a difficulty of like, okay, at some point we have to take responsibility.
100%.
So at what point do we say that? But also that point of, okay, like whatever you experience is what you know, and what you know is what you're gonna do. So there was a real like fight of like, where do I lay it? Is it okay? Like, come on, mum, like you're an adult now.
Yeah.
And at some point you have to take responsibility. Or is it understanding that this is what you experience and this is what you know it to be? So this is what you're gonna bring out. So I say it's quite a fight to understand it.
I think slowly but surely always is helpful, you know. So was there any faith at all growing up?
No. So when I met my mum's side of the family, which is the Asian side, most of them are Sikh.
Okay.
So was kind of introduced to that side of things. It is a very peaceful religion. You know, I think that was nice. And I would go here and there, and the food was good. That's the one thing. The food is honestly, the food is amazing. So I think that was just part of it sometimes, but I never got into it. It was never a big thing for me. My mum is like the person furthest away from faith.
Right.
So it was like, it is what it is. I think that I remember the first time I prayed, and it's like a whim of a prayer. I ordered some shoes and they hadn't come.
Right.
I'm like, I need these shoes like tomorrow, and they came. But it was like that's the only time I remember in my childhood praying for anything.
So with the Sikhism being like there, would you say there was anything, or like you were like, okay, I'm an atheist, I'm believing in something, like where were you at in terms of faith in general?
I would say I had no faith in anything.
So you just didn't believe in it?
Yeah, I didn't.
Really thought about it.
Yeah, I hadn't searched for anything. I think, and this is just me thinking out loud, maybe I would have faith if I thought my life was something amazing. I'd be like, oh, okay, like this can't just be my life. But I think because I would say my life was quite mediocre.
Yeah.
There wasn't anything to shout about. It wasn't like things were going amazing. Like there wasn't all these, I guess, God-related things in my life for me to even think about it.
Yeah.
But also I didn't go to the other side of being like, it can't be real because of all these bad things. So I never went to either side, I would say. Yeah.
Which I think is a good place to be, because it's open, I think. Sometimes when you sit in that middle space, you're kind of open to what may come along, rather than being like, I believe in this.
Yeah.
This is what
That's it, yeah.
You know? So then, talk me through the journey of then getting to faith. Where did all of that
encapsulate it?
Yeah, like young Dillon.
Young Dillon was...
I hadn't thought about it.
So it was quite a, I guess, long process without me realizing. So I got two really good friends from school, Kane and Levi. They're twins, right? A lot of love for them. And so they became a big part of my family growing up. So I spent a lot of time with them. Like if I go around now, like their mum is my mum, that sort of relationship. Their sister's my sister. And then later down the line, their grandma became my grandma. And it might seem like a small thing, but all of my grandparents passed away quite early. So especially my mum's mum. And she was amazing. Like wow. And she was a really big Christian, right? but the love that she showed, just her personality, it just, the fruits of the spirit are very heavy in her without me relating it to anything spiritual.
Yes.
But just like, wow, you know.
She penetrated joy. Yeah.
And like they'll vouch, she was hilarious, like just such a woman. So I think now looking back, my first experience of a Christ-like person, I would say. And so that would have been probably like between like 12 and 13, I think, when I first went into that environment. And that was present throughout. Kind of skip ahead to 17. This is when, like, I guess life became tougher, or the realities of life became more present. So now I was noticing, like, just not enjoying life as much. Not really.
Was this because, so you'd left school? Did you decide to go uni?
No.
Where
I was just out here. Just doing nothing.
No work, not working?
I was working, actually, fair. Yeah, I was working full time. But I guess, like, the purpose, it's like, what's the purpose? So yeah, I started to kind of lose enjoyability and like, okay, something's wrong here.
Did you still have friends at this point?
Yeah. So I was still like heavily involved in like friendship groups, and like still, I was turning 18, so like clubbing and drinking, all these things. And when I noticed it, I'm like, okay, I need to do something about it. So I went to the doctors. I was like, okay, you know, like this happening. And
so it actually got that bad?
Yeah. Quite quickly as well. Quite quickly.
You just felt like you were deteriorating. And had anyone like said to you that, oh, you need to go to the doctor? Or was it your own initiative?
Just my own initiative.
Wow,
Yeah. I think at the time I was quite aware of it still, you know. So I was like, okay, let me see. Let me try to get help anyway. So I ended up going to doctors. They were like, okay, you know, we'll see how long it lasts for. If it's over this amount of time, come back. So I think that was probably, they recommend like 4 to 8 weeks of like that consistent feeling before anything further. So I had that, and I remember November, this was just after my birthday. So November 19th, 2016 or 17. I'm like, okay, like things are the same. And I think you expect a certain feeling on your birthday, and when you don't get it, you're like, okay. So I went back, was prescribed medication for depression, started taking them, and then kind of just going in circles, like going out, drinking, gambling, like consistently. So like it was, my prospects of life weren't getting any better, and I'm still in the same situation. So I started to feel lower and lower, and then I started to feel anxious. So this was like a follow-on.
So then as you were getting lower and lower, do you feel like you were like even more going out partying and gambling?
Yeah. Like Thursday to Mondays. That was like,
wow.
That was it.
You were on it.
Yeah, you would have thought I was at uni. Do you know what I mean? You would have thought I was literally. And so, getting very drunk, doing very stupid things, and spending a lot of money. But the first time where like anxiousness or anxiety, if you like set in, such a weird feeling. So I was out. I was drunk, not that drunk, but I was drunk. And I remember being in a club and just like feeling so short of breath in the club, stood up and like just breathing heavily, like just, I don't know what to do, had to get out of it.
It almost felt like a panic attack. Okay.
And I remember leaving the club, and then I started walking home, and then I remember having like a panic attack. Maybe like 100 meters away or 200 meters away. Then the ambulance turned up.
Oh, wow.
It was like, okay.
This is like all happened very
it was just like, boom. So that was the first time that kind of thing happened. And that became quite regular throughout the next couple of years. So from like 18 to 20, those 2 years was like, it was normal. So obviously medication wasn't really working. Didn't have any sort of therapy or anything like that. So it was just medication. Evidently still drinking, so that doesn't really help when you're taking medication. This is, but between that 2 year period is also where like suicidal thoughts came in, and that medication only heightened those things.
Okay, so it made you feel more.
So it was like, this is worse for me if I take it. And then I moved to New Zealand in 2018.
So what stemmed that?
So I was boxing. So I was blessed with an opportunity to box abroad.
Wow, cool.
And so I went to New Zealand in 2018. Also thought, okay, chance to get away and like
maybe like start fresh.
Find myself, you know. So I went there with like a lot of high hopes. Got there, amazing place. Started boxing, And I'd say life was pretty good for a period of time. But then injured my knee when I was out there. And then like, okay, I had the reality of like, I'm going to come back home at some point soon because healthcare's a bit expensive over there.
Right.
So, and as soon as that happened, I'm like, again, mentally just like back into that place.
So essentially, like, you feel like New Zealand at the start was kind of like maybe a bit healing, this new place, but actually it was maybe just like covering.
Distraction.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was like a distraction. And I think when I came back, I think it was April or May 2018, so about 4 or 5 months later, again, like reality sets in, back in the same place, same people, like similar prospects.
Everything.
It's like, okay, what do I do now? Okay, I missed out on an important part. So just before I went to New Zealand, and this was also part of like that Dillon part of life. So I used to do fraud, right?
Okay.
Yeah, I did it a couple of times, maybe 2-3 times. And then just before I went to New Zealand, I did it again with somebody else. Shouldn't have done it. Yeah, so I'll come back to why that's important later on, but I did that just before I left. Come back, I meet up with my friend. We went to a kebab shop in Shinfield, remember it very well. Sat down, he was like, this is like mentally where I'm at. He was basically telling me like he's like on edge. And I was like, bro, me and you both.
Wow.
Like I've been in this place for a long time. So that was probably the first time I spoke to someone openly about it. Because prior to this, I'd already attempted suicide maybe 4 or 5 times.
Wait, okay. Let's go back a second. Okay, let's go back. So you had attempted it while in New Zealand?
No, prior to that. So prior to that, 4 or 5 times.
Did you feel alone during that time?
Oh, that's a good question. Yeah. I think it's how do you talk to other people about it? Because ultimately, when I talk to somebody, if I'm going to, I want it to help me, right?
Yeah.
I don't want to just talk for the sake of it. Even today, I'm similar. Like, I'm very like solution based. So how does talking to my mum or my brother or my stepdad or the doctor, whatever, how does that help me?
Right.
Because from my experience, that never helped. And in fact, I think I became so comfortable talking that it wasn't even a subject of like, people are surprised at how easy it is to talk about. Because to me, it's normal.
Yeah. Wow.
Whereas to most people, obviously, that usually isn't the case.
Yeah.
So when I talk about it and it's normal and there's not that there's no feelings attached, but there's no emotion outwardly.
Yeah.
Like it's like a surprise. Or when I can laugh about it.
Yeah.
It's like, because it's so normalized to me, it's desensitized the subject completely.
Do you feel like because you desensitize it, it never really allowed you to address those emotions?
Yeah, I think that would be a good connection to make.
Yeah, I guess that was a way like people was also brushing it off, right? And trying to convince yourself that you were okay.
Yeah.
I know you were okay in the present moment, but were you really okay in the present moment?
I guess this is I think the biggest difficulty with people and like mental health is not making that connection. Like I obviously know I'm not okay based on the actions that happened prior.
For sure.
But I don't know how to talk about that. I don't know how to describe it. I don't know how to link this to that. So you kind of disconnect it and it just becomes an action.
Literally.
Without, I guess, the reasoning behind the action. Yeah.
Then where do we go from there?
Then we go. So this would have been just before New Zealand, like that between period of again having that same feeling, but now going to medication because I had a lot of medication for several different things. So I would buy, especially paracetamol. I'd buy like loads and loads and loads.
Wow.
And then just take it.
Do you think because it was the easiest way? Do you feel like that's why you were then choosing to use medication?
I think there's 2 things. I think it's easiest, like in terms of practicality. I think in terms of success rate, not the highest success rate.
Oh, interesting.
So, if you hang yourself,
of course, there's no going back.
That it's done.
Yeah.
If you jump off a bridge, it's pretty much done.
Do you think a lot of it was then actually trying to be seen?
Yeah, like I don't want to die.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I just don't want the feelings I have.
Yeah. And do you think also, not the feelings you had, but also, I don't have to say the words, but you can see my actions?
Yeah, but it took a lot longer than you think from the actions to lead to anything.
Wow. Is that because still nobody knew?
No, everybody knew, but it was like, in terms of family, what can they do? And in terms of, I was way too functioning for people to take it seriously.
Yeah.
I still worked full time.
Yeah.
I didn't ever take drugs. I didn't become an alcoholic. I would still work out I was taking care of myself. And physically, I was working still.
Yeah.
But mentally, I was like nothing there. So to me, I think a big drawback, and this is where the healthcare system fails, I think a lot of people, is that they need you to be like on the edge of everything, like where you can't get out of bed. And it's like, but I'm not depressed. And this is a big thing. I was never depressed. Like, it wasn't that there was a lack of joy ever. But I would just have really big shifts between joy and sadness. And so it's like a massive fall from joy being like high, and then sadness being so low, that it was more the shift in emotion that was the issue of like not being able to regulate, just neutral. And that's why it took so long for me to get any help, because we're talking start this in 2016 and not really getting any support till 2020.
Wow.
So 4 years. Yeah.
So we're in the 4 years then. What was then like the break? Like, where was the turn? Like, what was the breaking point?
So
Where did it shift?
Okay, so I become Christian July the 15th, 2019. Yeah. So nearly 5 years ago. So that would have been like 3.5 years into that period of time.
Okay.
And I only really, I said seeked God is because I was like, what else? I've tried to...
Really? So there was, apart from like that grandma?
Yeah.
There was no other like inspiration or like...
No. So apart from grandma, and then my friend who I met up with, and we spoke about that situation. And I went to church because he was giving a testimony. Okay. So that was March 2019.
So he was Christian?
He was, yeah. So he was the influence to get me into the church. Okay. Or to show me, I guess, what that might look like. Yeah. And his testimony, which I already knew it wasn't a surprise to me, but I didn't know he was Christian like that. You know what I mean? I just thought, Christian, like people are Christian, but he was, I guess, trying to live that life also. And so that to me was quite a big impact of like, okay, maybe there is peace in stressful situations. Maybe there's more to life, basically. And so I went to that church for 4 months, from March to July. Yeah. And I thought that Christians were crazy. Still do a little bit.
So okay. What was everything you were feeling in that moment? Were you still in this place of like very much darkness? Set the scene of that when you first came.
Yeah, so I came in and I didn't really have any expectations. It was probably the first time in, 10 years I've been to a church. Okay. It's so interesting because I didn't remember this until a couple of years ago, but I actually went to that church for a summer school thing. Oh. About 10 years prior. Wow. Because
like a kid's...
Yeah, I would have been maybe 9 or 10. Okay. And there's a photo that I have today of me, my friend Nat, my cousin Aaron, and my friend Emmanuel 10 years ago. Wow. And then a picture, recently. And I was like, that's wild that I was in this church. But God was moving, amen. Literally. And I walk in Pentecostal church. Okay. So, vibrant worship, very happy. Yeah, happy. Speaking in tongues, a lot of things. And I'm like, okay, these guys are crazy. Like, honestly, I was just like, okay, I'm going to try it. Yeah. Let me just give it some time. And then kept going. And I met a lot of like nice people at the church. And that's probably why I stayed as long as I did. Because like, especially after church, it was cool. It was vibes. We'd play FIFA. We'd sit. It was just cool.
Did it feel like home?
Yeah, it felt like a community of loving people, especially the outer church, like the grandmas, aunties, uncles, like.
And especially with that lack of
in life. Yeah.
did you feel like that was the shift of like them starting to feel?
I think that's why I kept going, because of that feeling behind it. So the people, and I always say this, like, the reason I kept going to that church and still go to that church is the people involved. It's not because the pastor's amazing or his words are of knowledge and wisdom like Solomon. Like, it's just because the people are Christ-like and are trying to be. So, but I still thought they were crazy. Like, regardless, I still thought, come on. And I remember there's a guy, I sit in the same place, and there's a guy in front of me. He speaks in tongues at any point in time. And he'll pray loudly and he'll worship loudly. And I'm like, this guy's crazy. Like, what is this? Now I get it, right? I'm cool with it. But at the time, I'm like, this is so weird. So I remember I went away with the men. They had like a weekend away, which is went away with them. And I kind of got roped into it. Yeah, I go to this weekend away in Wales, like hiking and these things. But just being around men, older men who like, they just loved people. That was a big thing for me. Where I was like, okay, like these guys don't know me. I'm not Christian. I don't really care about God. But for some reason, I think it was just to me, it was a very different view of general, like men that I'd seen before in one space. So I think that was a big thing in me going back to church. And so I get back the weekend after, and before I went, I'm like, this is long. Because I've been like 16 times now. Like, honestly, I've been like so much. I've been going to like the younger adult section. I've been helping out our youth with the kid. Like, I've been involved with it without even caring about God. And I recall going in there and I said, God, if you're real, like, this is your time. I said, if you don't show me today, I'm done, because I ain't got time for this anymore. That July the 15th, I go there. I go to the front after the service. I don't know what the message was, but I just remember going to the front, I guess praying for the first time properly, apart from the shoes. So I pray and I say, like, God, if you're real, show me. And this is the amazing thing about God, is he knows your desires. So even if I didn't ask him for anything specific, he knows my heart and my desires. And so at that moment, I just felt peace. That was like, okay, God's real. That was the real moment for me. Okay, God's real, because never have I asked for anything and it just happened. I then remember Pastor Rana, who was the associate pastor at the time, came up to me, kind of asked me and was talking to me, and I'm like, I just felt like peace. He was just like, what is it? Do you believe in Jesus? Because that's important, right? Like, God's real now, but who's God? So he's like, well, like, God is Jesus. And I've been reading the Bible, a little, especially the Gospels, a little bit. And so I understood the premise behind what was believed. But yeah, he's asking me and I'm like, I don't know. Like, I believe God's real. Like, this was the big moment, because I'd always been agnostic. I didn't care enough to look into it. Didn't disbelieve or believe. But now it's like, God's real. But what does that mean? So he started talking to me and he said, like, we're going to go through this prayer, repeat after me. And I think it was the best thing he could have done. End up going through the prayer, and almost like a double portion of that feeling comes again. And I'm like, okay, wow. So I guess we were talking about like that process of like change. That's where it starts. To me, nothing got better until 6 months later. So as a Christian, I self-harmed. I overdosed many a time. Only February the 13th, 2020, which is the last time I overdosed, did things start to change mentally.
So like, what was happening in those 6 months? You were obviously still going to church.
Yeah, my lifestyle changed. So straight away.
So your lifestyle did.
Yeah. Straight away, I said, okay. So I was taking action as a Christian. From the day I was saved, I said, okay, it's important. I need to follow it. I'd started to change outwardly straight away. I was really interested in like the Bible and kind of the more depth of the Bible, So I was changing outwardly for sure. And it's not that like mentally things were changing. I think I was so focused on like God. I was like, okay, nothing else matters. And then February 13th, something just like triggered me heavily. I was like, okay, I'm done. And so almost like I forgot about everything else. And I remember just finding out some information. And this is the thing, to me, this was how I dealt with things. When something went wrong or something, I'm like, okay, I need to self-harm, or I need to do this, or I need to overdose, I need to release everything. Yeah. But this time I was like, nah, I can't. Because I was like, I know God now. I would say I have a relationship with him to an extent. So why are these things still happening? And then I remember that night, I'd kind of been clued up on like, okay, I can't buy paracetamol at one store. I had to travel to different places. And it was like 2 a.m. So it was garages, different garages. Okay. Traveling, buying.
So it was even like a lot of work behind
it. It was a long process. Yeah. I had to put fuel in my car. I think I wouldn't have had enough fuel. So like, it was a conscious decision. I think a lot of the other times it wasn't. It was like, I don't know what to do. I'm gonna do this. But this was like consciously. So ended up taking 187 tablets.
Wow.
Yeah. So I remember that day I wrote maybe like 8 or 9 letters. I was driving around taking medication and putting the letters through people's doors. Probably taking like half medication at this point in time. Get to my mom's house. She's in her room. I'm in the living room. I'm like, I need to take more medication. So I'm taking medication at her house and I'm writing out the letter for her. But I left it somewhere that she'd see, but not straight away. So, and I leave, I'm taking more medication. And then I park in this church. And I also had bought a bottle of whiskey. For the first time I'd like done it with alcohol. I even posted a video online of like, okay guys, like I'm done. And I remember like seeing missed calls come in and like text messages and just ignoring it. Just like, cause I know they're gonna. Yeah. That's pretty much all I remember until a couple of days afterwards, when I'm in hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you whacked out.
Yeah.
Wow.
So my brother found me, I think through, I must have had a location on one of my apps or something.
Yeah.
So either Apple Maps or Snapchat, something like that.
And what was the feeling when you woke up?
Disappointment. Yeah. I was like, I went all in. I'm still here. So there was a lot of disappointment and also just a knowledge of like, okay, I guess everyone that didn't know knows.
It just felt like a lot.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was sectioned for, I think properly for maybe 8 weeks, but then it was, I'd have to go there every day. I think it was maybe 14, 15 weeks overall.
Wow.
Just like sign in, make sure I'm still alive.
Wow.
Yeah. I had a lot of meetings with psychiatrists and psychologists in that time frame, which kind of led to what happens next. And so it was needed, but I think I was always like, I shouldn't be here. So I come out of the ward, I go back into work. I worked in a children's house for kids that have experienced trauma.
Oh, wow, that's amazing.
Loved it. There was a lot of healing was done there without realising. Just being able to talk to the kids, and they were between 11 and 17. It was a nice place to be, and I was able to impact people in a positive way using faith. Yeah, I come out and I had to go into therapy. That was kind of a condition of me leaving.
Okay.
It's like, you have to do this. It's kind of like I was on parole. So I go into the first 8 weeks. It's called MBT, which is mentalization behavioral therapy.
Yeah.
So we do 8 weeks, which is initial, which is just to understand what the therapy is. Okay. And then about 2 weeks after we finished that course, go into the real therapy, which was a 2-year period.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So twice a week for 2 years.
Wow.
Hectic. Yeah, it was interesting. I felt like I was in a very different position to everyone else. So initially the group setting for me, I just ticked the box. I had to be there.
Yeah. You were
I went to it. I spoke sometimes. Yeah, so this is obviously COVID as well. Because it's 2020.
Of course.
So churches are closed.
Yeah.
Not really getting much spiritual feeding in terms of one-to-one. The pastor Rana, I would meet every week from when I became Christian up until he left to be a pastor at New Church. I met him every week. Okay. So spiritually, it was a big part of that growth. And even during lockdown, we'd meet up in the park, keep our 2-meter distance. The faith in that period of time, it was like my own learning now. It was like my own time with God. The big difference I differentiate between that initial period of time to after it was understanding that I need to know God personally.
The relationship.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it seems like in the beginning it was all about like you doing the works, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
Changing, not doing this, doing
Yeah.
this. Yeah.
Obeying the law, some might say, being a Pharisee.
Yeah.
And but now it was like I need to know God for myself. But COVID was amazing for me, so many ways. Whether it was,
I loved COVID.
it was great,
Yeah,
honestly. So I was growing in understanding who God was, growing in and shifting my identity.
Yeah.
Yeah, this was the part where it was like, okay, I'm no longer Dillon, but I am God's child.
Yeah.
And what does that shift look like?
Yeah.
And how do I identify now? So I think that period of time of that kind of 6 months to 8 months coming out of that was, okay, understand who God has made you to be.
Do you feel like that's where like the, I guess, emptiness and the void really started to fill?
Yeah, that's when mental changes were made.
Yeah.
And it was like, okay, it's not that maybe everything is gone, because I would say for those 2 years of therapy, those things were still in my mind, but they weren't physically happening.
Yeah.
So I still felt that way, but now I've been given a means to deal with it. Therapy was really amazing. When I look at it,
Such an advocate.
yeah. So therapy and God was a big part of that in identity changing and understanding that you are truly new. And I was filming a podcast the other day with Taya, who's like the missionary that Biblical Life supports. She was saying that God woke her up and she heard the words like, "You are pure."
Wow.
And I just think that's beautiful.
Yeah.
And I think that is its truth. And it's like God has made you pure, holy, and set apart.
Yeah.
And when I started to believe these things and believe the Bible, that's when things change.
Everything else as your past, truly. And that's not who I am today. Which I think allows you to then, again, separate, because it's like, I'm literally new today.
Yeah. Like every day I wake up, I'm a new creation, and and obviously we have a decision to make. Am I going to follow Christ today, or am I going to follow myself? Literally. So whether we stay holy and pure is down to us. But I think it's important that we continually go back to that. And because even today I have like the things of the past will impact me now. Kind of something of realization recently of actually when I don't rely on God, I do feel similar ways. And when I'm not rooted in Him, and when things start to go wrong, I do feel similarly to 5 years ago. The big difference now is that I am rooted in God. And so I'm never worried about anything happening. But the feelings still come sometimes. I think about 2 Corinthians chapter 12, verse 9, 10 or 11. Paul has a thorn in his side, and he says to God 3 times, like, get rid of it, basically. And not verbatim, but he says, get rid of it. And God says, in your weakness, I'm strong. And then Paul says, I will boast even more in my weakness. So it's like, maybe that's my situation. Maybe, it hasn't gone away completely. But when I feel that way, He's made stronger. Yeah.
So how's the journey been since?
Yeah. So I ended therapy in 2022. That was a weird time. I was like, it's been a routine for 2 years.
Of course.
2 times a week.
Yeah.
And
was there a bit of loss with that? Because it was the routine.
I think initially, I think I went quite quickly after therapy onto the cruise ship. So I had a different routine that was hectic. So it kind of took over. But I remember the day that I realized, okay, something's changed mentally, is I woke up. It would have been a Tuesday or Thursday because that was the therapy days. I'm like, what am I going to talk about? Like, usually I go there and I'm like, this. But I woke up and I'm like, I feel okay. I don't feel like there's anything. And my therapist, she's asking me questions. I'm like, I don't really like. She's like, you sure? I'm like, yeah. So like we ended up having the session still, but it was very like, surface level.
Yeah.
And even like going into other topics. It's like the first time we'd had time to look at other things apart from like suicide and depression.
Yeah.
So it was like, let's have a look at this side of your life. So that's when I realized, okay, something is changing. It almost felt overnight.
Wow.
Because it was like, before that, I hadn't seen any difference in therapy. And I've been doing it for maybe 19 months before that.
So it was like really near the end.
Yeah. And then I used therapy really well because I was like, oh, okay, like maybe it does work. I'm kind of disappointed it took me that long to realize it, because I would have used it better.
But all in God's time.
But yeah, amen. Sometimes his time is not our timing, unfortunately. But I realized, I'm like, okay, this is actually beneficial to bring this up and talk about this with people. So since then, yeah, things have been good.
Yeah.
I've had ups and downs, but definitely not in the same way. It's like everything's been compressed. So my joy is not as high.
Yes.
And my sadness is as low. It's like together.
Okay.
So now when it switches, it's okay. It's fine. Here's what it is.
Yeah. It's more like a wave than like lightning.
Yeah. It's been cool. This has been like a real spiritual journey in that time, because it was like a weight lifted. I don't need to focus on my mental health as much, so I can focus on other things. And in that time, obviously, been doing a lot of different things, and I guess spiritually being more aware and more educated. Yeah.
So, and now, do you feel like over this time, has your like friends changed? Just like home life changed? Like, what's been, I guess, the biggest difference over the last couple of years?
Yeah. My friendship groups, I would say, are similar. I have a lot more friends.
Okay.
There's a lot of people I could just call and have a conversation with. Yeah. Or I think for me, pray with. That would be where I place a limit on that friendship. So a lot of, and that's through, the social media, the Christian events, the different preaching. Yeah. So it's been a blessing. I'm only around those people now. Like I'm around what I would say are, for the most part, purposeful Christians.
Yeah. Which makes such a difference.
Yeah. Like it only helps. Yeah. In terms of home life, so I haven't lived, I guess, at home since 2020. So I've lived either on my own or with friends. Yeah. And that's been cool. So sometimes I'm so caught up in my life with God in a bubble that I forget about anything else. Yeah. So I am working on that, because I think ultimately God calls us to minister to everybody. 100%. So that shouldn't be limited to just evangelizing on the streets, but also my family and my friends. And so so that is becoming more and more of a ministry. And I'm trying to work out how to do that, because it's outside my comfort zone. I can preach, I can evangelize, I can shout in the streets, but sitting down with my mum or my stepdad, even my brother, for the first time ever, we sat down and had a conversation, and ultimately also sometimes it's not always for us to save everyone. No, for sure. And
I never think we can sit in that place of thinking that we're going to save anyone.
Yeah.
Because only God's going to change.
Only God saves. Yeah. A biblical life, so initially it was called Spiritually Connected.
Oh, okay.
And I was fighting because it doesn't highlight anything about Jesus. Right. I could be spiritually anything. It could be like tarot cards. I said. So spiritually, I started it in end of 2022, and I started it because I was just going back onto my second contract on the cruise ship, and I was like, God was not present on the first one. It's a very devilish place, cruise ships. Yeah, wow. And I was like, I need some sort of outlet to be able to still spread the gospel. And I just saw the need. Like, I was like, okay, people actually care about this. And so in like June of last year, I was like, okay, let me like take it seriously. I want to educate people. I don't really want to motivate people. I don't really have a desire to do that. I want something long term. I want them to like think about something I've said for the week or for the month and like study it. So and I think God's blessed me with a way to communicate and even through my study of the Bible, and my studies of theology and apologetics, like to understand things that I can communicate in a really easy way. I post religiously, per se. It's a weird thing to say. It's just like, I can make sure that no matter how I'm feeling, I'm going to post. So, I've been able to separate the ministry with my feelings, which is quite important, because sometimes you're like, I didn't really get many likes, or I didn't really get any.
And it's so easy to get lost in all of that and then forget what you're doing now.
Yeah. So, and I would say I got to that place like towards the end of last year. I'm just like, it doesn't actually matter who it reaches, but it matters that I do it and I serve God regardless. Because the moment I base God on my feelings, I've misunderstood my calling. So and then things started to happen, and I remember the first preaching I got from it. So Anatolia was singing there, and I did the poetry to open up.
Insane.
And I didn't know Anatole at the time, right? But like, I was like, oh, wow, okay. So these things get happening, and then after that, it turned into preaching, because I was like, I love doing this, but I don't know if it's my calling per se. So then it became preaching more so, and then, you know, April of this year, I went to California for a conference. I'm going back there next month. And this is just through social media, just spreading the gospel. So yeah, it's even for the job that, you know, I'm praying God for. When I had the first phone call from the pastor, he was like, I've seen your content online.
Wow.
I love this, and this. But
I love that God's using the social media as like then for all these opportunities. You know?
Yeah.
And it's like you said, your religiousness with that and the routine with that, and the fact that you put now your feelings out of that. And it's like, okay, look at what the fruits can come.
Yeah. Like, I take it as this is like a full-time job. I think when you have a full-time job, you have to go. Whether you want to go or not is down to you, but you have to go there. And I look at it the same way.
Yeah.
Like, whether or not I want to record today, whether or not, you know, if it's something that God's placed on my heart, then I just have to do it.
Yeah. We can actually say, so what's the plans for the next couple of months?
Yeah, so we have a conference.
What's it going to be? Do you have any idea?
Reading.
Okay.
Reading is the aim. Potentially we have 2 churches we're looking at, and we're just trying to negotiate and work out how we can make it happen. Yeah, it's going to be big. It's going to be a lot of really exciting people there. I don't like to give names, because also I don't want people to come because of them.
Yeah.
To come for Jesus, you know. I don't care who's going to be there. Yeah, you know, I think it's important that we almost dismiss our knowledge of God in order to let him work. So there's this idea of like, actually our view of God is the limitation of God. So yeah, I would say completely like get rid of your view of God.
Yeah, don't put him in a box.
Don't put him in a box. Whatever you know him to be, that's great, but he's much more. So expect more from him than what you know him for.
Yeah,
like
abundantly.
Amen. He is a healer, but he's much more than a healer. He is the King of Kings, but he's much more than that. So yeah, I think it's important that we understand. It says in Isaiah 40:28, we cannot fathom his understanding. So I think ultimately understand that wherever you think God is, he's much, much more.
Yeah. Wow, thank you so much for coming today and speaking to me. I just think it's such a incredible journey that you've been on, and it's at never point easy, even when we are in faith. It's never an easy journey, and I think it's always important to recognise that. But yeah, I pray that moving forward he just continues to guide you, and yeah, thank you for being here.
Amen. Thank you.
Bye.